Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we're here with Dario Nardi and we're going to explore the 4 subtypes of the ISFP personality type. And so the first one we'll be going over is the dominant subtype. And so this one is correlated with brain wiring near the front of the brain. And it's also most similar to the hormone testosterone in Helen Fisher's work. And Dario calls this ISFP the enterprising lead.
Yes. Thank you for making an introduction to those ISFPs. Overall, I feel like, first of all, want to say that the dominant subtype, which I have met and known, is maybe not as widespread. It certainly doesn't fit within the stereotype of what people think of as ISFPs. And for Dr. Viktor Galenko in the Ukraine, coming from socionics and seeing that the ISFP descriptions in socionics were very different than the Myers-Briggs or David Kiersey descriptions, and is sort of wondering what's up with that. Because this in socionics, it's much more like a normalizing or dominant ISFP. And then what we have in Myers-Briggs and David Kiersey is this like fun-loving, is artistic, rebellious, likes people, a sort of like a more yin-ish, harmonizing, creative ISFP. So by having 4, we can really sort of stat out and see like, oh yeah, they're actually each theory, like socionics and Myers-Briggs, were coming at the type and representing a little bit different direction, probably based on their experience or something. So yeah, the dominant ones can easily be mistaken and probably even mistype themselves without some extra effort because of the materials are often skewed. So what they have is, like with the other dominant folks, like this brain wiring that tends to be towards the front. So they have a little bit like a more confident, faster set reactions, and this more in charge style overall going with them. They definitely have a managerial bent and an entrepreneurial bent to them. So ISFPs who not the ones who are in their garage randomly doing paintings with their mohawk, that these are the ones in business, that are usually, they may be leading a team and part of a larger business, but I do think internally they have a desire to be climbing the ladder, and like maybe they'll work in an industry for a little while, like say construction or something like that. And just because they sort of wandered in there, and they're ambitious. And so they're like, oh, like I have the certain skills and I know how to build relationships with clients. And some of the other workers I work with, like we could get together and start our own company. And then there's this like vision that comes in. So with all of the types, it's not just the first 2 functions. I think the third function is important, that there is this visionary energy that usually comes along with this dominant one. So to go through the 3, the introverted feeling is very strong and set in its values, and sort of wanting to see those values play out through their own behavior, to like get clarity on their values. It's not necessarily monastic, but it's a desire to execute, to act based on like what they believe and how they see themselves. um and if they're running a company or they're part of like a team, that they also are very aware of the identity of the people on the team, or the people they're working with, the identities, or the identity of the company as well, of society where it is, and then playing into that, which is why they can be very good at things like marketing. So I have seen this with the dominant ISFP in particular. Like they have a nose for business. Um, they're able to attract people and keep people, and they have an awareness of what the market is interested in right now. I think that the challenge that they can get is, one is when the extroverted sensing is a little bit too aggressive. So it's this yang like extroverted sensing as well. And yeah, it's about moving oneself and moving others. And when I mean aggressive, I mean both like an aggressive sales campaign. That's an idea. Like you're not going to hold back. Like you're going to do it, and get like all out there. But it can also mean like a little bit too aggressive in their everyday life. Um, because they are introverts. They do have introverted feeling in particular. They have boundaries. They have a very strong sense of that, and still, are going to push back. So I think when they're younger, you can see this combination of like visionary and want to do their own thing and will work hard, but also needing time for themselves a little bit and wanting to be a little bit inspirational. I think when they get into stuff like products, like the other ISFPs, they're focused on quality. Maybe not as much as the normalizing ISFP is focused on quality, but they do care about quality. And so whenever you see so let's say there's an ISFP who starts her own like fashion brand and fashion company. And she starts with herself and she trusts in herself and what she's doing, and also attracting people around her and making calls and connections and getting out there. And you're going to see this as like, for anybody who's been to Los Angeles and Melrose Avenue, where there are all of these stores that are outlets for not big name brands, but for all of the boutique brands, including totally up and coming. Like nobody knows them outside of LA, but has amazing stuff in terms of quality and style and all of that. So they could be in anything. They could be doing something scientific. They could come from education background. They could be in healthcare. Like, I don't want to narrow it just to business, but there is this ambitious, driven quality and a little bit of a fly by the seat of their pants. And they know, okay, I might fail. But they're okay with that. I mean, it's not that they love that, but they're like, okay, that didn't work. Like, let me try something else.
Yeah, this is the ISFP that most likely somewhat resemble an INTJ the most out of all the subtypes. Joel Markowitz, he talks about his dad who tests out as an ENTJ, but Joel actually thinks his dad is an ISFP. And so he's like, it's so strange. Why does this happen? And it's probably the dominant subtype mistaking itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I can see it because the energy feels very focused and not diffuse, and it doesn't match the MBTI stereotypical descriptions. Maybe if they were reading like the socionics descriptions, they would get a little bit closer to it, more likely. Um, but there's this, and the one that I know the best from years ago. I mean, scored INTJ, and then it had to go through that process of like, no, I'm not an INTJ because like all of these different reasons.
Yeah. I could see the socionics description of extroverted sensing, which is force, to fit an analytic SE user.
Yeah.
Because very cool. And so this brings us to the creative subtype of ISFP. And so this subtype has a starburst pattern show up in their brain wiring. And they are also known as the rebel explorer in Dario's terms.
Mhm.
And they're correlated with the hormone dopamine.
Yeah. So thank you for covering those essentials there. And I think that the two words describe it pretty well. There's this rebellious element and this exploratory element. They match very well with the sort of David Kiersey creative uh, style, that he would paint it as, and some like Myers-Briggs descriptions too. Um, I would say like David Bowie is an example. And yes, actually, some in the type community, renowned professional, has spent a lot of time researching David Bowie to say, yes, David Bowie was an ISFP. That's not just some random internet thought. Um, and so there's an element of like having your own style and putting that out there and being a maverick and doing things differently. And also not just saying like, oh, I'm only going to do music this way. No, to be in film, to be a performer, like try all of these different things, to travel around. They're probably the ones that could seem the most like ESFP like, because there is this get things going quality to them. But I think a lot of it is also because they are introverts and they have this introverted intuiting to sort of cultivate their inner creative spirit and their muses. Um, a disadvantage is that they're very perceiving. And so they better have a lifestyle or like such incredible talent that supports not just the travel part of it, but like actually sustaining a life and having some kind of foundation to go for it. Because otherwise it can seem like a series of 1,000 random adventures over the course of life. And anytime there's a big problem, being like, oh, I'm just going to run away from that and I'm going to do something else. So they are yeah, very with the whole brain mode, the holistic mode. I think that they could also score as intuiting types at times because there is this artistic quality. This could even be the overlap where INFJ and ISFP sometimes get confounded. Although I think that's more harmonizing. Um, they have this incredible perceptiveness because remember, like with extroverted sensing, they still are bringing in all of this information like voice tone and body language and the way the person is moving, acting, stuff like that, um, and interpreting that and using that information and or at least responding to it. I think setting and sticking to goals is a big challenge for them, so a lot of incomplete projects, um, and being like so immersed sometimes all of a sudden like, oh, I'm going to do this. Because what's going on functionally is that they have that still that mover energy of like a more dominant extroverted sensing, more yangish analytic extroverted sensing. But the introverted feeling is now a giant like mural of hundreds of different possible selves or experiences of the world, of experiences of life. And so to be in this place with this person in this relationship in this moment is very different than being in this other place with this other person at this other moment. And they're not walking around like contemplating that. Um, I mean, they can if you stop them because they have ISFP, like ISTP, has this introverted intuiting that can go to this philosophical place. Um, but there is this like paint the sort of palette of all of these different colors that the introverted feeling can provide. And if they are inconsistent in their behavior, from our point of view, that doesn't mean anything to them. That's just part of the experience of living. And so, why hold back from ourselves? So, this type isn't afraid of horror, death, evil, um, all of these things that society wouldn't be like, oh, like why are you writing a song about that, or why did you paint that kind of thing? And I do think oftentimes these folks are in some kind of artistic profession, as creative says, or at least using their imagination, um, and trying to like do something that has like impact and is daring, and they're willing to handle the ugly, the beautiful, like all of those things if they really sort of are able to pull themselves together maturity wise. Otherwise, like I said, they'll run away from it when it gets like, oh no, this is too much or this is not working out. The waves here suck at this beach today, kind of thinking. So why do this? um and I think where the challenge comes in with the dominant, the introverted intuiting has like this hyper confidence that can, and when it's wrong, it's like really horribly wrong, and they have no idea that they're horribly wrong because it's third function because they don't have a meta perspective on their meta perspective, um, unless they really mature. With the creative subtype, the introverted intuiting is more like this project and this project and this project, and sort of seeing what that could be like, and then maybe getting into it and realizing that there's no actual bridge between here and that vision. And then that takes the extroverted thinking to build that, and their brain is just not like wired to do all of that work. So that can certainly be a challenge. And then where the introverted intuiting can come up too is when we dare to visit the difficult places, evil, disasters, corruption, all of these things that there's also, we allow that, to acknowledge that within ourselves, and all the emotional palette as well, like shame and guilt and fear and all of these things. That's why they can be such good artists. I mean, like the Scream. I don't know his type, even though I've been to the Monk Museum multiple times. Um, but there is this, sometimes being overwhelmed by the archetypes. That's what I want to say. Is the introverted intuiting like is able to open this door to the unconscious that allows in images and material that's very difficult and that can really actually overwhelm them. And unlike INFJ or INTJ, which is like 99% of the time, like whatever unconscious produced stuff is produced, like, no, 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 we're good. We can handle it.
Well put, well put. Do you know with the sample size of your ISFPs, what is the most common type of ISFP and what is the least common?
Yeah, let's take a look. Now that we went through this before, even though I didn't have it prepped, I know exactly where it is. So I'm like, oh no, I can open the document right here, right now, and find out. Um, so when I did the analysis, which was over a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago for some of the types in that range there were 41 reports. However, some of them were redundant because some of the ISFPs came in twice over the course of years. And I also know a lot of ISFPs. For some reason, the sample size is not properly like gender balanced according to the MBTI data. It's actually reversed. So it's male to female 2 to 1. So there were a lot of male ISFPs in the group. And let's see how these are organized. Oh, good. Okay, so all the ones on the left-hand side. There's a little bit more of the normalizing dominant than we might think. So I see like the options here, like they're quite common. That said, the other ones are common too. So it's like a 60-40 ratio in terms of like dominant normalized. One side is like 60%, and the creative harmonizing is maybe 40%. Yeah, because it's not 2 to 1. So just taking a quick glance there, that's what I'm seeing. And that's like roughly the statistics for the ISFPs. And we've had more ISFPs since then.
That is very cool. And so it seems like the creative might be the most likely to be the musician stereotype, the singer stereotype, just basing it off of David Bowie.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it could easily um yeah, I don't know. I don't want to venture because I haven't actually done that kind of research, like the larger picture of what are they. I just know from the sample size that we have that a lot of them were actually almost in like they majored in anthropology in college and then end up doing filmmaking kind of thing. And
Mhm.
the joy of the filmmaking is not that they're super successful as filmmakers, not like Steven Spielberg kind of person, but you look at their projects and they're all like incredibly beautiful and talented, like reflecting talent and a passion for bringing the joie de vie, like the pulse of life, into their creation in a way that I think ISFPs can arrive at, albeit in a more abstract way. But I think for other types, very difficult to bring about that sort of like emotional thematic magic that happens. It's like the upside of the looping. So the looping is like introverted feeling with introverted intuiting, and then that's just like waiting forever for like the right thing to happen. That will just carry life will just carry them along in the right direction. But the opposite of it is when those functions are active and doing something is then wow, like NI and FI together, like super creative. And when FI leads it, FI is like, yeah, let's bring in all of the emotion and the truth of it, the authenticity of it. Because is Kurt Cobain, it was sort of like, you live for the music. I know he didn't say that, but that the sort of the stereotype that comes with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The pulse of life, the juice of life.
Mm.
ISFPs are able to convey that.
Another person I'm thinking of who's probably creative first, dominant second, but I wouldn't know, both deceased and didn't have the opportunity, would be Queen. Having seen the movie and listened to the music and understood like his creative process, be just sort of like I'm not going to say like a four-letter word here, but like let just like shock people and trust ourselves that we're going to produce something amazing. And also saying his band like trust me, and the producers just like trust me, like either we're going to like sink in a sea of mediocrity or we're going to have to like really embrace and express, who we are and what we're about and all of that. And then it becomes like incredibly iconic.
Or would you even say Prince in a way?
Yeah, I haven't thought about Prince's type. I mean, he's introvert and feeling for sure. The rest of it, I mean, I felt that, but yeah, he has, in the sense that he has a very iconic style. Never really cared what other people, how they would respond to it, or actually wanting people to be like, to get a rise out of people and to get a response. And those who love him, and those who didn't. I think, however, INFJ also has the capacity to look and feel very similar in the creative domain. And the two, I think the difference is that INFJ tends to be more like technically innovative, with the TI/NI coming in. Like there's a technical innovation, and the themes are a little bit more around like relationships and romance. But yeah, I hear lots of songs on the radio that when I listen closely and the lyrics, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's another ISFP. Oh yeah, that singer, she's ISFP. Like absolutely. Just thematically, that there is this flowing with the harsh realities of life as well as the beautiful ones.
Beautifully put. So wonderful, wonderful. There is something iconic about the introverted process of the ISFP and the INFJ.
Hmm.
And so that brings us to the normalizing subtype of ISFP. And so this ISFP might have more of an even field pattern in their brain. And they're also more serotonin driven in Helen Fisher's work.
Hmm.
And so Dario calls this one the dedicated careerist.
Hmm. I essentially dated this type for quite a while, or subtype, so I know it quite well. Um, Still ISFP, but nonetheless normalizing and fitting very well with the socionics. I think description of ISFPs. And yeah, they have that even farm field pattern. There is a little bit more usually bias towards the back of the brain because they're a little bit quieter and more contemplative. There could be a little bit of a bias towards the being more right brained, like artistic and so on. So there is still those, like the inner ISFP draw or the creative draw towards doing something creative. That said, they could be, yeah, they could be something creative like actor or even musician, dancer. I think that if they choose something that's artistic, they tend to be more technically oriented and perfectionistic than the creative subtype, which is more like, I'm going to get by on the raw emotion of it and the raw production of it. But they could also be in many everyday, I mean, as every type can be in many everyday activities, many everyday jobs. So they could be part of like, working in a flower shop or part of a clerical pool, or even being, I don't want to say computer programmer because they can learn those skills really quickly and then want to like move up from that to do something a little bit more interesting and creative. Just sitting in a cubicle in front of a computer would be like, it would have to fit as part of a goal. Otherwise, still ISFP wouldn't be able to do it. It could be something physical as well, like an athlete. It's just like whatever is a space that allows for a certain like perfect execution. So anyone, if you've seen like or Cirque du Soleil, there has to be this incredible drive for perfection. And of course, I actually do know somebody who was stilt walker for many years, in that not ISFP, ESFP. But I do remember this moment in Las Vegas watching one of these shows, and as the guy jumped from the trapeze, he's flying through the air, and his entire body is undulating as he does it because he's playing a fish, because the whole space is supposed to be an aquarium in 3D. And like that requires such incredible dedication to their craft to be able to do that. And that can look like a judging preference because they're serious, they're focused, they're disciplined, not like 100% of the time, but there's like this core element, this introverted feeling, which is like very monastic and is like, this is my drive. And I'm not going to let myself down to be less than what I could be. Um, and so very much like their career, the daily execution of it really can be at the um, when it's anchored deep inside. It's not just a random job to get by. It can be something deep and very, very motivating that they become incredibly good at. Um, I think the difference with the creative, then people are wondering, well, like, what's the difference? Well, one is they're not running around traveling from here to there, that they're usually part of some kind of institution or group, something like that, that is also requiring that responsibility and feeds into that serotonin need. So they could actually be like a musician in a band, but their focus is on the perfection and the discipline rather than bringing out like 100 different, creative expression kinds of things. Um, and there is a little bit more like linear thinking. So with the harmonizing and creative ISFPs, they can really blend in with intuiting types very well. But dominant and normalizing have a lot less tolerance for it, and normalizing in particular, like, they'll be entertained by things, so they're going to listen to podcasts about ancient Atlantis, and they're going to like read some books about tarot. And so the introverted intuiting is like, oh, what is this? And it's like a fun kind of play space, but then they're also like, enough is enough. And then what matters to them is their relationships. They're very close relationships. um their being in nature, their animal friends. Because I believe, like, if anybody is wondering what's the difference between ISFP and ISTP, it's a very simple test. To ISTP, every person is underneath like just another animal. For ISFP, every animal is a person. There's really like this in normalizing. I can see in the data was quite common, and we sort of expect this because normalizing is um the norm in a way. It's like getting along in society, and yeah, maybe being a little bit too literal or concrete or whatever for intuitors' taste. But for them, they're like, no, you take it slow. You wait for things to show up that need to show up, knowing that they're the right thing. Spend time with oneself, contemplating. I mean, there's nothing nicer than having a hot chocolate at the window while it rains outside. Just enjoying like those moments in life. And of all the ISFPs, this is probably the one that, rather than looking for the extremes of moments, which is the creative does, that they're really open to all of life's tiny little moments and really actually enjoying those, like immersed in those and really enjoying those. And that's yeah, and I think, just to get back to the career part again, if they're doing something technical, like you could easily see in a hospital, for example, like caring for people or physical therapist or something like that, where you still need to have a bit of technical knowledge. You need to show up at your work every day. You remember all of the people you work with, and the clients who come. Um, or if they're doing the artistic thing, it's for something like a marketing company. Like, that's and they're the ones that can most handle like having a family and bringing home a paycheck and like all of those practical things.
Makes sense, makes sense. It seems like the difference between ISTP and ISFP is almost like the ISTP is more objective and third person, like a detached observer of themselves. It's like us humans, we're just a different kind of animal. We're animals, essentially. Whereas for the ISFP, it's looking at the personhood within all animals. And so that is
Mhm.
such a good differentiation. And I think it even helps differentiate some TPs from FPs in some cases. All
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
And so that takes us to the harmonizing subtype of the ISFP.
Mhm.
And so this is the ISFP with a diamond field pattern in their brain, and they're correlated with the hormone oxytocin and estrogen. And so Dario calls this the empathic maestro.
Yeah, so definitely more empathic, more reflective. The most likely probably to score as and look like INFP or INFJ. Um, that they have this like sophisticated diamond pattern that's there. Um, well, while still being fairly grounded, by the way. Like they still have this like nice halo of connections that are also like some practical skills in everyday life. Oftentimes, still as with other ISFPs, some kind of right brain bias, even if it's just a small bias, it's there. Um, and then having this. So, what does the diamond pattern mean? So it's a small set of brain regions on the left and on the right and in the front and in the back, maybe just four, but could be five, six, seven, whatever, that fire simultaneously and work in sync. So that's why it's very holistic in nature, not in the holistic sense of being right brained, but in the holistic sense of being able to bring in some analytical skill, some holistic skill, being able to interact with others and also be reflective, at least for this when that network is activated for that specific task or situation. And this is true for all of the types, like just sort of reminding about that. Um, and and then the reason why they can be so attentive to what's going on with others and then look like an NF. Um, One is the extroverted sensing gives them tremendous awareness of all of like the micro elements and micro clues of body language. So the eyes, the facial expression, the way the person moves, how they hold themselves, um, and then working with that in a very open-ended way, a very like tactical way, so that if they are doing something that is, I mean, is with all the harmonizing folks, their best use is one-on-one work. So let's just say they're like a massage therapist is understanding like every little thing that happens with the person and being very in tune with that because their introverted feeling is again this giant palette of options. They don't feel wedded to be like everyone has to be like this, or I have to only reach this goal, or whatever it is, or behave this certain way. Um, to be in the moment in a different way with each person, at least mentally speaking. Um, and then the extroverted sensing is very much the sensate, like yin version of extroverted sensing, the pleasures of the moment, the beautiful details of the moment, the pulse of life, the literal pulse of the person as they're changing, getting more excited or relaxing or whatever it is. Um, the capacity, and again, I think this is all ISFPs, and when we talk about subtypes, I mean, there's always this capacity that these really subtypes are also facets of the type, and people just tend to emphasize one over the others. But this ability to bring into the moment the through action the energy of opposites. And I know that sounds very abstract, but and this is where the therapeutic facilitative element comes in. And so when we think of like the yin yang symbol as an example of the dance of opposites. And so we have symbols that represent that. And INFPs tend to be quite good at representing opposites in some way, like the ego and the shadow, or sensing, intuiting, or whatever it is. With ISFP, as opposed to telling a story of good and evil, that the ISFP brings into the moment the counterbalancing energies of light and dark, heavy and light, good and evil, all of the different like emotional palettes, and is able to bring those, compose those in the moment. So the going back to my work with Linda Barron's, how we gave each type like a two-word name, not one word, but two words, and so that they're the composer producer, and they have this really strong composing quality. And for the creative subtype that's expressing something that's like an actual like art project, many times. It could be a performance. It doesn't have to be an object, but it's essentially that. I think with normalizing, the focus is more upon like the set piece of my life or the performance of my life, like my actual small local life that I live. Not this some dream life, but the actual life. And then the dominant is usually towards some kind of vision, like a company. It's an ambition, like whatever it is that's very big. That's usually involving other people. And with harmonizing, it's about composing from the emotional palette and the palette of like the gentle touches and the gentle adjustments and the gentle smile or severe, like if that's needed, in the moment with the other person. And so, really, which can be tremendously therapeutic because people come in, and as Jung talked about, I mean, the essence of psychological types was not about the types, it was about the problem of one sidedness. And so the ISFP, without their thinking about a principle of one-sidedness, they don't need to think about it. The when they're doing their work sort of magically in a way, that they just have a sense of like, oh, this is the energy that's needed now to counterbalance and to bring. And this INFP can also show this. Just INFP tends to be more abstract in words and stories as opposed to like an actual physical adjustment on a person. So really, really very like holistic sense, which can look intuitive, and there is this intuitive element, and yet at the same time very grounded. Um, and then what I would say is the challenge, like for harmonizing ISTP, is that harmonizing ISFP also has a big challenge of living in society. Like can be, and because the introverted feeling is there front and center about who I am and what I'm about, and um, what life is, it can be about, that that they can be very critical of society, and then wonder like where do I fit in this? And then the introverted intuiting comes in and is like, well, maybe you're an alien from another planet. They're like, how did I end up here? But still, when it comes to the actual daily living, they're quite practical about it. That doesn't mean that they're super successful or anything like that. I mean, they're usually quite happy to simply be um, the joy of helping others, and as long as life is comfortable and pleasurable is really the word. As long as life is fairly pleasurable, then they're pretty good with it. Yeah. So those are the four ISFPs.
I could see how any harmonizing type of any type could mistaken themselves for NF, just of not feeling like the rest of the pack and also having this empathic, intuitive side that's good at counseling and a confidant for people almost if they
Mhm.
wanted to be. Yeah. So thank you, Dario, for that wonderful deep dive. And so I'm curious, what traits do all ISFPs share thematically usually among themselves?
Sure. So looking at the sort of the garden of ISFP themes, um, and by the way, at some point along the way, more than, gosh, I don't know, what was it, like 2007 or 8, came up with the 16 icons, one for each type, and the ISFP is like if you, because they're simply silhouettes. If you took a heart and a rose stem and like put them together, like sort of what would that look like? But of course, the rose has thorns on it. And then if you look at a lot of things like tattoos with like the heart, there's like swords coming through it, or there's thorns, or it's on fire, or it's bleeding, or those kinds of things. So ISFP is this, both like the beautiful and the ugly, the painful and the pleasurable, um, the good and the bad, like all wrapped into one. That every rose has its thorns, and I would say that's a really like essential theme that runs through their lives. I would say the other thing is they're very in tune to the pulse of life around them. So they can be like a human pulse, and like, oh, we get excited, or we're relaxed and comfortable, or we're sad, or whatever it is, like those adjust. But just like the pulse of the town, the pulse of the beach. Um, Walking with an ISFP once, and just through in Costa Rica with all of the palm trees and all of that, which were not planted, by the way. These ones were like where the forest begins, and the whole forest is alive in a way that that just like a planted park in the US is not. Like there's just a wildness to it, which is natural, and it came about that way, as opposed to somebody like digging holes and planting trees and like a factory farm kind of thing. And so really ISFP takes a lot of pleasure in experiencing that wildness of like the quiet wildness of life. Um, and if it sounds contradictory, what do you mean quiet wildness? Like, what is that? That makes sense to ISFPs. That's so that's what I mean by that. I think also, so INFP is very focused. Well, as Linda Burns would say, it's an affiliative type, INFP. So that they are very much focused on their relationships as well as their own wants and needs. Like they're more consciously like trying to figure out how to balance those out. ISFP, on the other hand, as Linda says, is a pragmatic type. So pragmatic with introverted feeling first means me first. Me first. My beliefs, my values, what's going on with me, what I feel is important, my style. This is why so many ISFPs have actually tremendous challenge with relationships, more than the INFPs, because there's the waves of life push them in a different direction, and they want to follow their own muse and go their own way, and have this sense of like, oh, this isn't working for me, so let me just go somewhere else and do something different. And there is this like ruthlessly pragmatic element, and I think a bit of that is fed by the inferior or aspirational function, extroverted thinking, that inside every ISFP is an ENTJ. That's like cold and harsh and determined and all of these things. Whereas INFP has inside their inner ESTJ, who's more about like organizations and society and like doing your responsibilities. And like in many ways, ESTJ and ENTJ are really different as opposite types, and they come out differently. ISFPs have a wonderful capacity to do absolutely nothing for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden produce something genius. And it's like, I mean, literally, like it could be weeks, it could be years, whatever it is, where it's just like the output is mediocre, or they're literally not doing anything. They're like smoking weed kind of thing, or they're just mulling along in their job. And then they're like, oh, here's a wave coming over here, meaning like something internally to them, and catching that, and then really like devoting, like, but then the introverted intuiting kicks in and they devote like 100%, and they have tunnel vision, and like 3 weeks later, like the mural masterpiece is done, and people are like, oh my god, like where did that come from? And I know that puts a bit of weight on ISFPs, thinking like, oh god, when are other people going to expect I'm going to be a genius again? I think that they don't want to think about that. They hate pressure. That is absolutely a theme. ISFPs cannot stand the expectations of other people. If you are a parent or a friend or coworker, boss, whatever, of an ISFP, and you have expectations of them that you're going to lay on them, like good luck with that. Because they'll immediately notice that and be like, nope, this is not going to happen. And in fact, let me show you how it is going to happen. That said, they can also be, and I think INFP is like this too at times, like they're just standing there, minding their own business from their point of view. And all of a sudden, people want to come over and be their friend. And they're like, I didn't even do anything. Like, who are these strange people talking to me? Because they're very, very slow at solidifying and committing to relationships. Like even a friendship. Yeah, you have fun with some buddies like randomly one night, or the ISFP, she goes out with the girls drinking from the office or whatever. It doesn't mean anything to her. Those are not friends. Friends are something that you can never rush. It's not like the NF who's like, oh, we have so much in common just from our one night of conversation. Like we're we're like a twin flames. Like, no, ISFP doesn't have that. Okay, they're very practical in that regard, and they're like real friendship relationships take minimum months and usually years. And they're very, very hesitant. So this idea that like, oh, I see this ISFP, like I'm going to be their friend. Even ENFP is going to discover that's a big challenge. It is a big challenge. Um, and then I would say that there are two more things. One is sort of the secret. Like everybody has like a little. Every type has like a little secret thing, usually related to their third or fourth function in some way. And for ISFP, it's this creative problem solving. Because nothing have I said up until this point did I use the word problem solving. But actually, ISFPs are really quite good at problem solving when it's like in their interest and it requires some knowledge in this and that. All of a sudden, they're like, yeah, I have a brain. Oh, this, and then the extroverted sensing kicks in and it's like, oh, this is how you fix this. And some of that just could be the SP temperament, but there is this. And because of SP temperament, there is also an element. It's like, well, that's not quite the solution that I expected, but it works. So they really can be very like quick and surprising, and it's a side of them that some people might think like, oh, but problem solving is ISTP. I'm like, don't get too stuck on the words. It's just dealing with the situation in a creative way. And then the last thing, which is unfortunately, like their burden to carry is self-esteem. And that really is all of the time. And, you know, and again, it's some of it also is INFP. Is like, am I worth it, or am I like worthless as a person? Like, because they notice all of these things, like, oh, the times that they acted nasty or evil, or like they didn't follow through with what they believe that they are. They were violent instead of peaceful. As one ISFP said to me about a relationship, I found myself raising my voice. And he didn't like that. And then he thinks like, that's something wrong with me. Like maybe it's not a good relationship and they understand that, but they've also, if they've committed to that, then they're like, that's me. Like I need to find the peace inside, and like, how can I do that? But nobody is perfect. And so there's this constant struggle. And part of that is also the, you know, ISTP has introverted thinking to basically like put on their hat and like fit in with American society very well. They can be like a tech manager, make $200,000 a year, no problem, if that's like the direction that they want to go. ISFP, being the well-rewarded creative genius, is a little bit harder road. And when they're in school sitting there and they're like, this system of school is insane. Like the ISTP also knows the system of school is crazy and doesn't suit them, but they're like, practically speaking, I just have to get through it. ISFP is like, this is deeply wrong. And so they're going to rebel against that. And then so there's this constant struggle. When I say self-esteem, it's not just like, oh, I'm a bad person, or I'm depressed, or something like that. Is because the dreams that they build up for themselves with the introverted intuiting, and the meta perspective it provides, and then that light that comes down showing them like, no, you're not like anywhere even close to that. Like you're just an idiot. You know, then that can be very, very tough.
Yeah, there's this period of inactivity I find with a lot of IP types. They take a while, they need to like refine the inner contents, but once it's refined, they put it out there and it's like, wow, that was amazing. I can't believe like that was magnificent.
Yeah.
Um, Another common element I see in many ISFPs is that they can see a lot, observe a lot. They might say very little about it, but they perceive the situation. Um,
Mhm.
and I also find with female ISFPs, some of them can be quite aesthetic in how they appear. Like
Yeah.
they have their own sense of style and they tend to dress for themselves in what they kind of see as looking pretty or aesthetic, or what expresses themselves, or what they feel like
Mhm.
wearing. So,
Yeah, and I would add, speaking of female ISFPs, and just as like dominant feeling types, and then very much with the SP temperament, like when something is not going well, their ability to turn around and and like really stick it to you if you're going in the wrong direction. Like I could imagine like somebody harassing, like an ISFP mother, someone harassing one of her kids. Oh, I wish that person luck, because that ISFP has like 100%. I mean, unless for some reason she's in a very like irresponsible space, she has 100% loyalty to those kids, and is going to be like 100% there. And then the moment somebody crosses that and like puts them in danger, like that animal instinct comes up and like very much responds to that. Um, and just in everyday life, that can also be a bit of like talking and drama and concerns and like that kind of thing. They can show up in small ways, but I think that's also like a theme that is with ISFP, is like that they, when something really important is threatened, like watch out, because that extroverted sensing is going to be like boom.
Absolutely. Very sharp, keen.
Yeah.
Makes sense for an artisan improviser type. So, all right. And so, thank you, Dario, for coming out today and sharing your knowledge on these subtypes. And so, go check his website, Radiance House. It has all his goodies. And his book, The 64 Subtypes, will be linked below too. And they have expanded profiles of what we talked about today. So, we'll see you all in the next video.
Thank you.